Started. Kathy is going to join us in just a moment, but this last session, I think, as I described earlier, is hopefully maybe a little bit of a bow on all that we've talked about today. I would imagine, if you're like me at this point, you're a little brain weary. You feel like you've had your tank filled, and maybe it's a little overwhelming at this point. The title of this session was intentionally kind of had a double meaning to it. I know that it mentions the word trust in it, and maybe you came feeling like, okay, I want to know all the legal ramifications of a special needs trust. And that's not really where we're going. There is going to be, as I said earlier, there's going to be a session in the morning. It's going to be talking about special needs trusts and things like that. And that is an important part. Powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, all of these things are important tools that we need to think about. Guardianship, all of these are really vital tools that we need to understand as our children move into adulthood. Because it's a critical part of us making sure that we continue to have the legal rights to do the things that we need to do to care for them. As Pat has mentioned multiple times, I'm really worried about Pat and whether she's going to make it home. I'm just so afraid she's going to die before she gets out of the building. We've touched on that several times, but that is the reality, right? That's the reality for all of us as parents, as we age. I know some of you, and a great comment got made in the dad's session the other evening, and just a reminder of how important it is for you to do some self-care and make sure that you're healthy and strong as you can be to continue to care for your adult children as you are able. And so we just kind of want to talk about, and when we think about trust, a part of this stage of our lives and the lives of our children really is all wrapped up in trust, isn't it? It's about finding people that we can trust that can help us through this part of the journey. It's about the trust of transitioning from maybe a great school setting that we were in into sort of the wide unknown of what it looks like out there in the different services. It's about trusting providers. It's about trusting caregivers. It's about trusting medical staff and things like that, and building those kinds of relationships. And you heard me talk about relationships earlier, and that is a big part for me. I think a part of what we're doing is we're pursuing and building networks of people that we sort of co-opt into our circle to be a part of our circle of care for the ones that we love. As I was thinking about this and kind of kicking us off in this session, three things kind of came to mind that I'll mention to you, and then Pat and Kathy will share a little bit, and then we'll do some questions or whatever. But I think three things to know that are really important in this stage, and as you transition and think through the big picture of what it's like to be the parent of an adult with AS. One, I think it's important to know yourself. It's important to know who you are, what you're good at, what your skills and gifts are, the kind of person and personality that you have. It's funny because not only have you seen three parents on different parts of the spectrum, you've seen three parents with very different personalities, some similarities, but some differences. You've met all of these parents around the room and others, and you've seen all kinds of different shapes and sizes and personalities, and you have to figure out who you are and be who you are and be the kind of advocate that you can be as you've been built to be. Sometimes you'll have to get outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes you'll have to realize that you have certain limitations and you need to get some help in those areas where you have those limitations. But I think knowing yourself, knowing and caring for yourself is really important at this stage. And, because it can be fearful to think about, well, what if? Well, there are some things that we can do, right? There's some things that we can do to make sure that we're around as long as we can be. I believe ultimately that's not in our control, but what is in our control, we need to do a good job at. And that's why I go to the gym 3 times a week. And you're looking and saying, really, we can't tell that you go to the gym 3. Well, just think what I would look like. My wife owns a baking company. Just think what I would look like if I didn't go to the gym 3 times a week. But that's why, because I know I have to be healthy and strong. I know I can't afford just to sit back. I appreciated one of the dads sharing the other night that after, I think it was Phoenix, he said, ended up going to the doctor and he had 5 major 90% plus blockages and all of that. And it was a wake-up call to him to realize how important it is to do that self-care. Guys, go to the doctor.
That's right.
Get the checks, even the ones they have to put rubber gloves on for. Do what you need to do because it's important for you to continue to be around. And so I think knowing ourselves, I think knowing your child, we've talked about through all of this day that it's not going to look the exact same for every single one of our children, for every single one of our families, but you need to know your child. You need to know what the expectations are that you have, that you're comfortable with, that works for your families. And every family's not going to be in exactly the same spot. Your child, I think one of the difficulties, and I know that when Nicholas was very young, we went to our very first Angelman Syndrome thing. It was up in Champaign, Illinois, and it was a big picnic. Nicholas was very little. We had some friends that had come to visit, and we all went up together to this picnic. And I'll be honest with you, it was the first time we'd been around anybody else with Angelman syndrome.
Right.
We didn't understand anything, and we were completely freaked out. Completely freaked out, especially by the older ones.
Right.
Because we looked at that and we projected everything that we saw into Nicholas, and we're like, what are we going to do, right? And I think that our tendency is, if we're not really careful to pursue knowing and understanding our child well, I think our tendency is we project maybe the negative and the overly positive into our children in ways that are not very helpful, right? So we have expectations that, well, if my child can't do this, this, and this, then I'm a failure, and he or she's a failure, and everything's broken. Not necessarily, no, that's not how it works. Or we say, well, if this is going on, and these very difficult things are going on, and these complications are going on, then that's for sure going to happen to my child. No, not necessarily. We're complex beings, are we not? We know that. Angelman syndrome is just one part of your child. One part. All these other aspects of who they are and their own personalities and your family dynamics and all of those things. So you've got to know you, and you've got to know your kiddo and understand how to navigate in that. And then the other thing is to know your circle, to know your support structures. And I do encourage you to think about that, to not be isolated. I don't really think that, I know the tendency is, and I think this is why it's so difficult on health and on marriages and things like that of parents with special needs kids, is that the tendency is to isolate, right? The tendency is to be overwhelmed by the realities of care for your child, and so we naturally tend to isolate. We naturally tend to pull back. I want to encourage you to have exactly the opposite posture. We need one another. It's why it's important to come to things like this. We need support structures around us. Your family is a key part of your support structure. Your friends are a key part of your support structure. For us and many of you, our faith community is a big part of our support structure and just a natural part of how we connect. Those professionals, and we've talked about those, whether they're caregivers or doctors or therapists or clinic workers or whatever they are, all of those people are in orbit around this reality that we're sorting through and we're figuring out. And so I just want to encourage you to have a certain self-awareness, kid awareness, community awareness, to realize we need everybody. We need everybody that we can to come on this journey with us to figure out how to do all of this best. And that will take some trust. And with trust comes risk, right? Right. We all know that. In relationships, in trust come risk. You'll have some people that'll hurt your feelings. You'll have some people that'll flop and fail. You'll wish that they were going to do really good. You'll think they're going to be great, and then it'll go to their heads, right? Is that the phrase you used earlier, Kathy? It'll go to their heads, and they'll think they're in charge, and suddenly they're the parent.
Yep.
You'll have some difficult things along the journey, but maybe we, more than many other parents, certainly more than most parents of typical adults, we have some challenges that require us to work a little harder at our relationships, to work a little harder at building that community around the one that we love. And so I just want to encourage you to keep pressing on. I'm so encouraged just by the conversations that I've had, by the things that I've seen, by listening to parents who are at different places along the journey. You've got a lot of great resources out there. We've got a lot of helps in each other. It's why I'm so encouraged by what's happening here with this organization and others, because we need each other. So I'm going to stop. Who wants to jump in first?
You can if you want. Or I can.
I'll just go right down.
She's going to sit. Pat's feet hurt.
My feet hurt.
And we don't want her to have any more health risks, because it's possible that she could die before we're done. But we don't want that to happen. We really don't.
Okay, I got to cut that from my little spiel. We're talking about letting go and trust. Letting go works in many different ways. Letting go of control. And trust me, I'm a control freak. I'm a dental hygienist. I mean, you need somebody who's in control, just those little things when you're cleaning teeth. So I'm perfect for that. I'm also a Virgo. I mean, those things are people, really, it's hard to live with. But I have to say that the letting go is something we do in order to allow our family members to flourish. And you will find the more you back off, they will start to flower. And they will start to find their own likes and dislikes more than you've already presumed. Things change as you go through different stages of your life, and sometimes we hold on to the old things that we thought our kids liked and disliked all the way around. I thought my daughter loved purple forever and ever, and she got married and had purple bridesmaids for sure. That never changed. Her older sister hated pink, wouldn't do pink anything, wore pants only, hated those frou-frou dresses you put on when she was a kid, and she is the frou-frouiest pink person you would ever find right now. All of our likes and dislikes change, and we as family members have a tendency to get into ruts. And it's easy to start making assumptions because it's easier. The trust that we're talking about is not a special needs trust. That's 8:30 tomorrow morning, I think. But the trust is trusting your son or daughter to communicate with you their likes and dislikes, and to trust the people that you are going to enrich their lives with by bringing them in. We're not going to do it right all the time, and you're going to say, oh, that one's not going to stay. But for a while, some of them are going to stay by choice, and we are going to let go and have some trust. I'm 2,000 miles away from my son. I'm 20 minutes away on the other side of town most of the time. And I don't worry about it. I don't worry about it because I trust the people that I have trained, I have hired, I have worked with the ARC to be a part of his life. And I know they'd call me in 10 seconds if something was up. But I helped build that network. And I did that by doing my research and outreach to as many different groups as I could find. As I said, I used to belong to, I went to TASH for some of their stuff educationally to try and create inclusive programs for my son. And I didn't get all of it, and I could get some of that. And I went to different other groups that were advocacy groups. I went to family support groups, lots of them. Some of them I actually ran. And we found tidbits of information I learned from all different kinds of families. And I think diversifying my life to make it look more like Joseph's community was going to be very helpful for him. And it did. From the different kinds of people I brought to him, as well as the different kinds of people that I learned from, who had their children from institutions. I had a family come up to me in Home Depot, and this mother was in tears, and she had met me at some other family support group, and she goes, "They came and took my daughter. And they put her in Sonoma State Hospital, saying I couldn't take care of her." I was mortified. I'm crying in Home Depot. And that's what happened to her. And that turned into a whole nother story. But it also taught me a lot. I've had friends who've had children who've had serious accidents, from near drowning accidents to other kinds of sexual assault. And I'm not trying to be afraid and talk about trust, but you have to trust yourself to do the right training, to know the people, and to know your rights, to know your child's rights. I think the education I have given myself, pulling myself up by the bootstraps, as it were, has been the best thing I've done for Joseph. Because he could not have that if I had not stolen all this information from all these places and all these people. And I'm very grateful for the mentors that I've had in my life, from service providers to other advocates to attorneys. I do have a special needs trust, and that guy, he's great, and we're good friends. But, you know, those are the connections I've made, and I've been able to enrich Joseph's life because of it. I think we have talked a lot today about relationships and how important they are. And they're going to look different to all of us, because even though these kids all have Angelman syndrome, they are as different as the three of us sitting right here. And we've made different decisions along the way, and they're all right. They're all correct because they made them. And you can't make someone came up today and said something about inclusion, and I had been speaking earlier about inclusion in Joseph's middle school years, and one of my best friends had come up to me in San Francisco, and she said, "Well, Pat, you're not going to make all the rest of us do this inclusion thing, are you?" Like I had the power to do that. I said, "No." I said, "I will advocate for you for whatever you want for Rob, her son, and anyone in this room for whatever you choose, as long as I think that's in the best interest for that kid, and you've done that," which I trusted her to do, and I trust these people to do that same kind of decision-making. So there's no judgment here. And when you come to these conferences, whether it's Angelman Syndrome or ARC or Down Syndrome or Autism Speaks or wherever you go to find your resources and information, everybody's going to have a different idea of what's the right thing for their kid. And you're not going to find that right match. You might be looking around the room trying to find the right kid that looks just like Joseph, or just like Nicholas, or just like Rocky, or Amanda or Angela. And then I can find and create the exact same thing. But that's not true. It's not going to happen that way. You have to really, it comes from your heart. You'll know when you found the right thing and when it's the right time. And it's not going to be easy. It is not easy to do any of this. The letting go we have to do is painful. But if any of you have ever sent your kids off to college, you cried for that too. It was hard. Or even bought them their first car and watched them drive down the road. We worry as parents, that's our job. And so this is just what we're doing, and we're not worrying any more or less than our other kids. And we worry for each other because I think we have created bonds as family members, because I know what we have all done together to get wherever you are. And I think we need to make sure that the goals are still going to be independence and involvement. You're going to be involved in their life forever, until I die. Okay, I said it one more time. But you're going to be involved, but I'm stepping back. I have been able to step a lot farther back than that first day he moved into his apartment, or the first day he was born. Because I've built the right systems, and I trust that I have built the right systems around him. And that's scary. It's still scary. Accidents happen, things happen. But I know that I'm making the right choices for him. So the independence you want to create and the involvement you want to be a part of can be conflicting a lot of the times. But what's different about all the other decisions we've had to make for the last umpteen years? So I want to encourage you to reach out and take the snippets of information you can get from as many groups as you can reach out to find the key to being able to make your son or daughter's life work for them and for the rest of your family. If you have other children or siblings or parents, because a lot of us have parents. I've got a 90-year-old dad I'm taking care of, and I'm very grateful that Joseph lives independently, because if he wasn't in his apartment, this would be an interesting trip for me.
Right.
I'm bringing my 90-year-old dad and my 39-year-old kid with Angelman Syndrome. Boy, this is going to be a picnic. So trust me, and trust one another to make the right choices. I thank you for your attention, and I hope you ask us some questions as you sit there thinking about it, unless your butts are too tired and you need to move on. But Kathy?
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a long day for you guys, and I'm happy to see that a lot of you have stuck with us throughout the day, and I hope that today has been beneficial for you, because I know it's been beneficial for me. You know, just because we're speakers today doesn't mean that we know everything. You know, I had the opportunity today to talk to parents that I've never had before, and I learned from a lot of them today. So this has definitely been a two-way street, and I know that I am forever grateful for this opportunity, because I don't have this opportunity every day, as a lot of us don't. So this seminar is about letting go. I was really bad at that. I am not going to lie. I didn't get in-home supports for Amanda until she was 10. So for her first 10 years, I did it myself. And she actually did not get a full-time care provider until she was almost 16. And how did I let go? Well, I showed my son's care provider how to give a bath 5 days in a row. And then when she went ahead and gave my son a bath on the 6th day, I was surprised she was capable. So, and not because I didn't think she was capable, but because I had never had anybody else bathe my child. Any of them. You know, putting their care in the hands of somebody else was difficult for me. You know, I'm their parent. Whether they have a disability or not, that's my job, is to parent them. And I took that job, and I still do. I took it very seriously. So transitioning from me caring to my children to being 2,000 miles away from them, that was a process, and that process did not happen overnight. And I don't think that process should happen for any of us overnight. It's our children have to get used to it, and we have to get used to it. That's so important. I do think that there were benefits to Rocky and Angie. They received support services much younger than Amanda did. Rocky was 2 when he had his first respite worker. Him and Angela, they don't have the attachment issues to me that Amanda does. I still, to this day, have a hard time being in the house when Amanda has a provider there, because Amanda wants me to do everything for her. I don't really look at that as a failing, because I didn't know. You know, we're all going to leave this earth one day, and you know, I did. It never crossed my mind to have somebody else take care of my daughter, my oldest daughter, until I had my other 2 who had Angelman syndrome, and they started to have seizures, and I needed the help. That's the only reason why I got help. So, you know, letting go isn't something that happens overnight. You do it bit by bit by bit, and you know what? When you first get support services, if you want to start letting go by having somebody just cook their dinner, that's the first step. You know, I had a problem with that first step. But you have to start somewhere, and you can start small. I'm sure you didn't just, you know, get support and then just, never interact. It's a process, like everything in life. It was a process to learn how to care for our children with a disability, and it is a process to let somebody else start doing that. I guess I did not realize that expectation at the beginning. And trust, how do you trust? There has been twice that we have had incidents with Amanda being, I can't say mistreated to the point that it was really bad, but we have had a few instances of Amanda being hurt, the provider knowing it and not doing anything about it. And, that was one of my worst fears, was that my children are going to need something and somebody's not going to step up. But in the overall scheme of the years of support staff, that's happened rarely. She's now had support staff for 18 years now. That's happened twice in 18 years. I fired the provider, and most people have good intentions when they get into the direct care field. I feel like they do, because, they don't get paid very well. They can only do this job because they want to help. And that helps me to keep that in mind. I owned a home care agency for a long time and took care of senior citizens. I did that job because I loved it. I loved taking care of people. I loved helping them be independent and stay in their home. And I feel like the providers that take care of our kids feel that same way. And we have to look at what they're good at. Not everybody is going to be good at community living supports, at taking our kids out in the community. You might have one provider that's really good at personal care, another provider that gets community integration. With my eldest, Amanda, community integration is really difficult because she's really hyper still. She's almost 30 years old, and she never really calmed down. So that takes a very skilled person, and it takes a right person. And when I find that right person, now I know it. I know that Mandy will be taken care of and won't run off and not come home. So it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight for us, but it is good to start.
Just two questions, ma'am.
Yeah. Are there any questions, on topic, off topic, that you want to ask us? You guys just too tired? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, yes, yes. You in the yellow shirt.
My name is from the Toledo area. This is Jerry. And when he was about 8, 9 years old, I sent him for respite to, thank you. I sent him to respite at a very well-known institution in Toledo. And when I came to pick him up a week later, because we had flown to Arizona for something, and the minute I saw him, I knew something was wrong. It just was that intuition. And he started crying, he was clinging to me, and I was like, what is wrong? I asked the care staff, and they said, nothing, he just was missing you, he's been crying, he just wants to go home. So I took him home and went to get him ready for bed, and when I pulled his drawers down, he was bruised on the insides of both thighs from groin to knee. So at that point, I rushed him to the hospital, the police were called, all kinds of things happened. And my first thought as a mother was he was sexually abused, he was, God only knows what happened to him. After the investigation, which was horrendous, I've never been through anything like that, including finding out how quickly he bruises, which means they have to cut him and time his blood as to how it comes out of his arm. We had to do that to him. And I remember just sobbing. So we went through this whole long thing. Come to find out, what they think happened was there was one person on staff. They pretty much locked his door. He was in a bunk bed. He tried to get out. He threw his leg over the side of the bunk bed, which was rails, because the way the bruises were, they were diagonal on his thighs. And so they believed that he fell, and that's how his inner thigh. So the conclusion was he was not sexually abused. He was Neglected, correct. And so I got an attorney, we didn't get to court, but I ended up going before the board of this fantastic institution, and they said, what is it you want? What is it you want? And all these women, they were all women sitting there, older women too, and they're kind of sitting there with their arms closed, and I said, I want to know this is not going to happen to another child in your care. That's what I want to know. And the one lady, she started talking to me. She says, well, he wasn't sexually abused. He just fell out of his bed. So I took all these photographs out of my purse of his groin, and I threw them down the table. And I said, now you tell me that it's okay for your son or your nephew or your grandchild to come home looking like this. You tell me it's okay, and we're all out of here. About 5 of those women started bawling. And finally they stopped and they said, what is it you want? What is it you want? And I had a list of demands. I wanted those kids checked in when they come in by a nurse, when they go out by a nurse. I want 2 staff at all times. I want no sleep staff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we made changes to the system, and he wasn't abused. And I learned to trust again. And he was ultimately placed when he was 13 years old in a wonderful group home that we call Angel House. He has fantastic staff like Christine. And he's 24/7. He goes to concerts. He goes to ball games. He goes to dances. He comes home every Saturday with me. And then when the van comes to pick him up, he doesn't even look at Mom. He's off. He's going home. That's his home. And I'm 20 minutes away. I can be there in the blink of an eye. But I have no regrets. Placing him at 13 was the most emotional thing I've ever done. I sat in the parking lot night after night, bawling and praying to God that he was not being abused in that house with the dark windows. But I did it, and I learned to trust, as you say, and I was able to put his support system in place. I was able to help hire. I was able to lay the house out the way I wanted it. And it took years and years and years, but now he's 32, I can walk away and I know he's safe. And that in itself is absolutely humbling and grateful. I am just grateful. So I appreciate the conference. It's the first time we've been here in 20 years, so I just wanted to share that it's okay, even though you go through something horrendous, and we still don't really know what happened to JJ, but I have to trust in God that the findings that they found out were accurate, and it made sense. So, but thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Amanda came home from school. My husband and I weren't home. We were grocery shopping. And her provider noticed she was moving. She wasn't moving quite right like she always does. And her provider was giving her a bath that night and saw a bruise in her bottom, like barely even saw it. And it ended up that Amanda had a bruise where Amanda should not be bruised. And I was ready. I'm just so glad that the school was closed at that time, because I was going to call them and say, hey, so nobody should ever have to go through that, but we did have to take Amanda in and just confirm that everything was okay, and thank God everything was okay. She ended up backing into, they had lifts, like Hoyer lifts in her classroom, and she ended up backing into one. And it was from a staff person at school that I do trust, told me that. And I just kind of said, well, and the staff person said she didn't cry out. I saw her back into it. She didn't act like she was in pain. And I said, that's the thing about Angelman syndrome, though, is that you won't always know when they're in pain. If they get hurt, they could laugh instead of cry. And that's an important sign that you need to, if they're laughing for no reason. I know literature says people with Angelman syndrome do that, but my kids don't do that. They just don't laugh for any reason. They think inappropriate things are funny, but, so, yeah. I had to learn to trust again after that, too, and it wasn't that hard because nothing had happened. But thank you for sharing that. That's an important thing to know.
Any other questions? Comments? Anything? I know, Billy.
I just, trying not to let go too much. So, I've mentioned before that I'm from Maine, and we're really rural, and there aren't a lot of support services. So, I came to the conference when my daughter was 5, and I remember seeing all these older Angelman children and being like, oh my word, I don't even know what we're doing with her at 5. And I heard some parents talking about puberty, and I was like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Like, you know, I've got a girl, and oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to deal with menstrual cycles. And so we kind of shut off anything that didn't apply to those early years, because all I could handle right then was the information about those early years. And so it's been 16 years since I've seen another angel in person, and until Wednesday, none of my children had ever seen another angel. And I know that it's, you know, this isn't our only community, right? We have to have supports around us, and there are people in our life who love Leah. We have no one in our life who is willing to take her. Except, you know, my daughter, who still lives with us, will babysit for an evening so my husband and I can go out. But when she leaves to go to college in August, at the end of August, we're on our own. Even though I'm one of 12 kids, my husband's one of 11, we don't have anybody in the community in anywhere that's willing to do that. And because of the rural nature of where we are, we're pretty isolated. There aren't a lot of services available, and the respite providers in the area aren't comfortable with Angelman syndrome because it's not Downs or autism or something that they recognize. So coming to something like this for us has been eye-opening for my children. It's given them a sense of normalcy in our life that's sometimes feels like we're just weirdos in this sea of typically developing people, and that when we go in public, we're buffering. You know, as I go down the aisle in Walmart with Leah, I'm like creating a space between her and anybody that she might want to hug around the neck or grab their purse, only because it's attached to them, but they don't know that. And, you know, all those things that we do that have now become second nature. We walked in on Wednesday, and my daughters saw all these children with their families, and one boy started sneezing, and his brother was trying to help him cover, because you know they don't cover on their own, and it's just like a big, you know. And the last time he sneezed, he couldn't quite get it up there, so he's ducking to make sure, you know, doesn't get it right in the face. And my girls, for them, it was like, oh, somebody understands. You know, this is a typical, so this for us has been really healing in a way, a struggle in a way, because we have realized that there are some answers that we came hoping for, and we're going to go home a little empty. But because we're all connected, there's still pieces that we can put together and figure out. And we know that even though we're isolated geographically, we're not alone. We're part of a larger community. And I just want to tell you, sorry, thank you for coming and for sharing your stories and your angels and your struggles and your insight and your hopes and dreams and the different ways that you've found to adapt your lives to meet the needs in your families, because I think all of us probably have been able to take little pieces of that and, you know, use what we can and leave what we can't, and it's just been a huge blessing to me. So it helps in that whole letting go process to know that other people are doing it. And so maybe we can, little by little, also just start to let go and extend a little more trust and let other people be super uncomfortable when my daughter comes to hug them, and let them say, I don't want to hug, instead of me like stepping in between and trying to be that buffer. It's just all sorts of little things like that, but I really appreciate it, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome.
I want to say one word, and that is that we can never forget how much our children have to teach the typical world. Being typical ain't all it's cracked up to be. And we feel like one of the greatest teachers in our lives has been Nicholas. Nicholas has taught me more about simplicity and humility. What's really important, we all know the routine, right? When you come home from a crappy day and your kid doesn't care, they just want to love on you. You know, our kids have a lot to teach a broken world. Especially when that broken world looks at them and thinks they're broken. But yet, so much of how they view the world is right and is the corrective that we need in how we think we've got it all figured out. We think we've got it all put together. And so I think there's much to be said for, and I know it's a lot harder when you're isolated and you feel by yourself, but there's so much that our kids have to offer this world at all of their ages. And I think as they get older, it even becomes different. Let me just say one word about this, is that we're recognizing that, so Nicholas as a little boy was the cutest, most beautiful little boy ever. Now I know I'm a little bit biased. Some of y'all want to fight me for that privilege to say that, but, and as he gets older, we're recognizing that, I still think he's an incredibly handsome young man, but as he gets older, that cuteness sort of wears off and stuff like that. And you know the difference in the looks that you get, right? That the looks for the cute little one, oh, that's so precious, you know. But you translate that into a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old and a 35-year-old, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem so cute to them. It seems like I'm kind of freaking out now. And I think we have to be a part of letting our kids teach people to get over it, right? And working through that. And I think that's why the support of having each other is so important. So thanks so much for being vulnerable and sharing that and laying that out there. I think that's good for all of us to hear that. So, and some of us are so privileged to live. We live in a town with well over a dozen angels right here in Louisville, and so we're incredibly privileged by that. So, any other questions that you have? Okay. All right, we've got a sibling ready to ask a question, I think, right?
That's right. Hello? All right. So following up actually on her question earlier, I'm working on transitioning care from my mom, who's been caring for my sister for 36 years now in her home, into something like a group home that's very small, maybe 1 or 2 people total under my care. And it's really hard for my mom to let go of that and to trust somebody else to care for her. Like, she doesn't even take advantage of a lot of the services she has available to her because she just doesn't trust people to do it. Respite, she uses very rarely and only in very limited context where she can still supervise it, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But, and so I guess what I've been looking for is how can I help her to be more to be more accepting of what we have to do.
Of what you have to get ready for and the transition you need to make. She's not, your mom is, you said 70, right? So she's been doing all of this. So she's going to have to do some of it with someone for a while till she can ever leave and let that person be the respite person. Very much like the model Kathy was using, where this is how you cook. I wouldn't start with bathing. I would start with cooking. Cook a meal, feed a meal, help with dressing, some of that kind of stuff that's going to have to happen during a respite period of time. And then that person is who first you have to find that person, help her find that person. And we talked earlier about who you could hook her up with in Missouri, and I think Nicole will help you. But then once she does that, I mean, the heart-to-heart has to come from you to her, that Mom, you're not going to be here forever. And you need to trust and let go. And you're only going to trust if you can see someone is competent at doing what you have been doing. And respite would be the first baby steps to start with. And then she could move up. I mean, if you're talking about doing a group home, that means she's going to be in a whole nother house when you do that. She's going to be parked in that driveway. So you have to, and that hopefully the person you hire for respite will be the person that would take over in the house as one of the roommates, as a care provider, where she has already developed that trust. So when you get the house with the 2 or 3 people living in it, and one person who will obviously have to be living on site to provide the services, you've already built that little bridge. Before you get there, you have to have that conversation with her. And then that's what you would end up doing. If you needed help in training someone, I think we could help you find someone who could help you train that individual. She will want to be doing all the training, but if there's an agency of support, I mean, she's not alone being a 70-year-old mom with a 30-year-old kid at home. At least she's not sitting on the couch smoking dope.
That's true.
Oh, that's Oregon, I'm sorry. Anyway, I just think that that's the first place to start. There's a first place to start is the talk that you've got to have, and let her help you, even though she's done the best job ever. But the reality is, we're not going to be here forever. And if you don't plan for it, and planning at 70 is kind of late, but it is what it is right now.
So I think one of the, I kind of got caught up with emotion when I was trying to ask the question, but what I found throughout my life trying to build trust with people, I also have issues with trust for lots of other reasons, is that structural trust is an important concept, and that's why I referenced your commentary, is that you made changes in the protocol of the care providers that allowed you to not need to emotionally trust and kind of have faith that they were good people doing the right thing, but have some structural protocol to it that they were beholden to, that kind of enforce that trust in ways that were both good for the providers and for your son, right? I feel like we need more of that. I think we need guidance on that, because she was amazing that you came up with that on your own, but how do we know what the right things to ask for are? How do we build a protocol that we can trust will always protect the people we care about, so that we can let go easier?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that if you start with your mom doing the training of the new person, okay, and someone, she will probably have had assistance, possibly through an agency in the area, to have that person referred to her. She can interview the person and say no or yes. That might take 10 people to come through. But when she finally decides to train one of them, she can write the rules. This young lady over here was dealing with an agency, so she could go in there and say, we're going to sue your ass because this is a public-funded agency, and you're going to be closed tomorrow if you don't change these rules. They're not going to do that to your mom, but your mom can write up the rules that are, this is the protocol for food, this is the protocol for everything. Probably something that all three of us have already for our kids, but your mom may have never written it down, and this will make her think about it. If you could help facilitate that with transcribing it into some kind of book, you're going to build a structure of trust for your mom that we built for ourselves, but we did it a lot earlier. She wouldn't know where to start. But if you wrote that protocol of how to train and also then what is expected during the training and the reporting that you give back and forth. At the end of each shift, we all train, they report, like nurses in a hospital. One staff reports to the next set of staff all the time. Well, they would be reporting back and forth to your mom, and that would keep a sense of control for her. And she needs that because this is 70 years. Well, 36 years. And that's where I would start. But you're dealing with different things, but maybe the same kind of rules. You could just call her and ask her what those rules were.
Yeah.
And say, how did you set up that?
Well,
But I mean, she was having a nurse check before and after. The reality is there's 10 questions your mom would ask for a staff person who's coming in to do that 3 hours of respite while she went to get her hair done. And this is what did you eat? Where did you go? Did you do anything? Did you change your clothes? How many times did you go to the bathroom? How did you, and blah, 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 blah. And if those 10 questions get answered properly and there was no problem by that person, that's a good day. And then she's going to go to the next day and the next day. And then you'll do it so that it's 3 hours every day. And then you're going to, but meanwhile, you're building your house with the 3 people and the respite and the other thing. And I think Nicole had some people in Missouri she was going to connect you up with. And that's the place to start, with that age and with that situation. My suggestion. You guys have anything else?
No, you hit the nail.
There you go.
Great. I guess the only last thing I would ask is, do you know if ARC or other, maybe ASF, has something that we could start from that is fairly comprehensive, a template? I know every angel is different and is going to need specific things, but it seems like, I mean, we already all do a lot of work for this, but it seems like an awful lot to ask each family to be able to build that, and we all need to, though,
What is the template for specifically? Are you talking about the hiring or the training of this individual?
Something, like a protocol, like a day-to-day, what to expect, how to, and that builds in principles that we can ensure we can trust what's happening.
Oh, I think your mom could probably tell you, your mom could dictate to you, this is how I run my day.
Well,
and then if she...
There are things she's not going to think about.
Well, no, but you're going to ask that. Okay. Yeah, and you don't want to reinvent the wheel, but it is very individualized. So I'm sorry, I would not let you do Joseph's or you do Joseph's.
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to have it very individualized. I would, the ARC, if you go to their website, they do have trainings for family members on that. So I'd go to the national website on that. And that would do staff training and hiring. They have all of that kind of stuff there. But I think you'll get a more personal thing from the woman that Nicole is going to hook you up with. But the more you let your mom dictate everything, and I mean literally dictate to you, and you put it in a computer and say, this is what she's doing, and you'll have to ask the minute questions, because she's going to make a lot of assumptions. Well, she gets up and she gets out of bed. Well, how the hell does she get out of bed? Does she roll out of bed? Is she happy? Is he sad? What's her mood? Da-da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And you're going to, do you put her on the top with railings? Apparently not. Those are the things that you could ask the questions from all these things that you've heard today, and then you write it down. She is going to be empowered by the information she's giving you, and she'll rethink it and she'll add more to it, and then when she does the training, and I cannot tell you, if she has not done any of this in 36 years, she needs to do this. Because this is what we have done as our own therapy, if we have ever had anyone other than ourselves take care of our children.
Well, and that's part of why she hasn't,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and let me say one other thing is that you're also dealing with a generational issue if your mom's 70, you know, and so I think that being gentle with that, I mean, likely in her mind, from her generation, the experiences that she had, this was what a good parent did. A good parent did it all. A good parent didn't trust outside, you know, and all of those things. And so, and there were a million reasons not to trust the system, not to trust anybody else. So that's a journey. So something in addition to getting out of her comfort zone to start working on something like what Pat's suggesting, you know, it might be worth, and again, I know this might be a stretch, but it might be worth looking at the possibility of maybe connecting your mom with a counselor, right?
Yeah.
Getting someone who could come alongside your mom and just kind of talk through some of these things. Talk through. Absolutely, yeah. You know, I mean, someone, and so when I say counselor, I mean, that might be just a friend that you really trust, but somebody who could talk through some of those issues and helping her to release some of what will be very natural guilt for her, very natural feelings of inadequacy, and what does this say about me as a human being? Because if the bulk of her life has been defined by my identity is being a parent of a special needs person, then, you know, part of her fear is that you're going to take away her identity. That's who she is. That's not what she does.
Yes.
If she's 70, she's been doing this for 36 years. That is who she is. And so maybe some counsel and some advice to come alongside of her, help her to kind of unwind her personal identity and her role as mom might be helpful in the process as well.
Yeah.
And some of that might be good advice for many of us, right? You know, we sort of live in a culture where, you know, going to a counselor, going to a pastoral counselor, going to a therapist, whatever is, you know, oh, that's for crazy people. No, it's not. It's for people who are just kind of broken and messed up trying to figure it all out and need a guide, right? I ask for help if I need directions. Well, my wife is shaking her head and saying, no, you don't, you big liar. I should ask for help when I need directions, and that should be true of life as well. So, sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We've got just a minute. We got what time for maybe one more question if it's a short question, and if it's not, we can be done early. Early. All 35 seconds of early. So, no, we're actually a minute and a half. Hey, I just want to say my thank you, and I'll let Pat and Kathy do the same. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out. I know that, yeah, this has been a long day, but hopefully there have been some nuggets that you can take away. So thank you. Thank you for trusting us to talk a little.
I'd like to say thank you as well. I really appreciate sharing your kids. And it's been great to see all of the families that are here and the diversity of where we've come across the country. Well, I went around the room the last time and saw that everybody's from all over the place. So we have South Africa and Nebraska and Maine and all over the place. So it's been pretty wonderful to meet some of you and share our stories and have you share yours with us, because we are all connected and we know that. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say thank you, too, for sharing your stories with me throughout today and this entire conference, but especially today. This is only the third conference I've ever been to, and it's the first conference where I actually had an opportunity to talk to so many parents. And that's been invaluable for me, meeting older parents that, you know, I knew years ago online, and I get to meet them now. That's an amazing experience, and something that sounds so little is so big to me, because we are all spread out, and I thought I would never meet 3 people I've met this week. So, and the younger parents, you know, you all inspire me to, I seem to have gotten some energy that I didn't know I still had from the younger parents. So I thank you for that.
And we're done.